Women who left a rich guy, why did you do it? He couldn't understand I wanted to keep my financial independence and thus had to keep working. This, and when he realized I would not become dependent on him financially, then he raped me. It was all about exerting control, and when he was faced with a situation for the first time where he couldn't control a woman with his money, he thought to control me in some other way. This is a mood. Same thing happened to me, and it was because he'd always make fun of me, wanting to have my own job, calling it free money, and referring to it as not necessary, even though I didn't trail that far behind him in income. He used his wealth and spoiling me materialistically as a means to justify/compensate for his controlling and possessive behavior that suffocated me until I left. He would take me on surprise holidays, etc., but it doesn't matter in the end if he's not treating you right on a human level. He was emotionally unintelligent, entitled, and quite narcissistic. How they treat your emotions, their character, and how they respect you as a human being ultimately matters more than money. Had a guy ask me where I wanted to go on a trip, I was like, IDK, maybe Greece. He was like, let's go to Rome. I had been there before several times, but told him that's fine. Where we go doesn't matter as long as we're together. So we went and saw a whole bunch of sites, which I had seen before but still loved it. But I apparently wasn't fawning over him enough and didn't seem grateful enough for him taking me there. He kept trying to tell me how much money he had spent on food to apparently try to make me grateful. LOL. Which led to a whole huge fight, and then we broke up basically. This was my experience of dating a rich girl to a T. Never would have thought it was possible to be so miserable in so many beautiful places. Money doesn't buy happiness. My ex would book these elaborate dinners, trips, experiences, and half the time they were last minute to intentionally take me away from plans with friends. It was all a front for control because the second he didn't get his way, it was like a flip of a switch in personality. I've learned it's better to build wealth with someone. I'm glad to hear this. I've been single for a while and finally met a girl. I was completely honest with her. I'm not in a good financial spot, but she just loves me back. She's like my best friend. I probably suck at everything else, but I know how to treat her. That's what matters most. All I would say is, don't get complacent. Money is still important to have a good life with her, especially if you want to have a family. Need to view earning well as a duty, not something flashy to get girls. All the best to you both. Because he was a materialistic, narcissistic asshole who was only interested in anything on a surface level, including love. I'm not saying that rich guys are generally like this. This was just my case. Same experience with the added bonus of he wanted me to give up all of my hopes and dreams for him. I'm a guy who left a rich guy, and it was exactly this. He was a true trust fund baby, and after 2 years of feeling like he just didn't care about me, I realized he just didn't care about anything. He collected friends if they had interesting jobs or backstories, but didn't care about them. He'd buy pets to post on his Instagram, then give them away after a few months. A few of my heirloom decorations I'd bought into our house, mostly gifts from friends and family, he'd give away to the cleaner because they didn't match the aesthetic or he didn't understand why I'd care about them. In one of our final conversations, he flat out said, I know I'm supposed to care about you, but I don't. There wasn't even any malice in it, it was just factual. And that made it very easy to just switch off my feelings on return. He was also really lazy. His dad bought a local coffee shop for him to run to try and build up some sort of work ethic, but he hated it and eventually moved back to his home country. I took the dog. What made you fall for him in first place? Originally, he seemed moody and withdrawn and said he wanted to be a photographer, and I naively thought he was some sort of tortured artist who just needed someone to support him. I planned trips to photographic places, bought him art supplies, etc. Even then, all he'd want to do would be to sit inside and smoke. It was for sure my fuck-up to assume he was something different. Also, he really did have interesting circles of friends that he'd show me off to, and I guess I kind of fell for that lifestyle too. Ouch, you're a fixer. Be careful, people like him easily can detect people like you to abuse your empathy. 100%. It's definitely a fault of mine that stems from my own insecurities. So I'm at least thankful this relationship helped me see it, and to be mindful going forward. Same experience with my rich ex-boyfriend. Narcissistic, materialistic, selfish, and so entitled. We were on a date, and it started pouring outside, so he got in his nice car, then refused to let me in because he didn't want the interior to get wet. We were 2 feet from his car. I wouldn't have gotten it any wetter than he did. That's just one example of the many red flags. Anyway, I had to walk a block to my own car and was beyond soaked by the time I got in. Also, I had to pay for all our dinners, movie tickets, etc. Because he wanted to make sure I wasn't in the relationship for the money. Oh, and his parents were terrifying. Very, very few boundaries. Edited to add, I also wasn't allowed to cut my hair or style it differently than what he liked, or wear anything he didn't approve of first. I really dodged a bullet by dumping him. I can objectively attest to this. The only reason why I don't want to passionately demonize him is because he seemed very principled, conscientious, and emotionally intelligent before we moved in together, and he went on very frequent business trips. So I came to realization rather slowly and had a lot of time to consider if I absolutely needed to break up and didn't have to have a lot of fights with him. I don't think his financial success played that much of a role. Why should I walk on eggshells and not get treated with respect with someone else's money, when, even if in case of unemployment, I can find a job with better conditions and my own money? He used to give me benzos unknowingly and have sex with me. Apparently, he just liked it better when I was unconscious. I did speak to the police, but it would be hard to prove. He said she said. I'm sorry, what? You poor woman. I can't believe that the police were no help. That's the most awful story I've heard in this thread. Sending love and hugs. More common than it seems. Mazan case, France, currently in court. Giselle was not the only one. There was another victim, did not file to complain, stay-at-home mother of 5, and at least another who is pretty sure her husband did it too to her but can't prove it. And here you need to have a prescription to have these drugs. You can't buy them like chips. He kept bragging about daddy's money and that he will take over the company. It was embarrassing, and I realized I could never fall in love with him. I broke it off 3 months in after he asked me to go on a 1-month cruise with him and his family, fully paid for me. I decided that it just wouldn't be right for me to go on that cruise knowing I wanted to break it off. I'm still very proud of myself for making that choice at 22 as someone who grew up poor and never even been on holiday, never mind a different country. It was my dream to travel, but it worked out well because now I get to travel due to my own hard work. I knew a rich kid who couldn't wait for his grandma to die so he could get his inheritance. It was a shit ton of money, but the way he spoke about it was so off-putting. I could never imagine waiting for the day my grandma dies or verbalizing it to someone. The thing is, he actually liked her and lived with her. Yikes. I remember a guy I was talking to once said it didn't make sense to move out of his mother's home because he would inherit it when she died. He wasn't rich, though. Like, dude, your mom is only in her 50s. That's a ways off. You're planning your future around your mother's death. That does not speak well of your view of women. The reason women don't want to date men who have not lived on their own is because of the inherent responsibility. Keeping your home clean, paying bills, cooking for yourself. So this doesn't really solve that. He can't seem to imagine a world where his mother might enjoy having her home to herself. I broke up with him because he was an asshole who felt he was never wrong. My mom was so upset I broke up with him. She told me that money was more important than love and I should stay with him regardless of my feelings. So glad I didn't listen to her. To me, if you are in a relationship for money, that's typically a job. Main difference is that it's not 8 hours a day, it's more. But even if you can segment it down to 8 hours a day, that's 1/3 of your life. We're willing to be unhappy. I'm not a woman who left a rich guy. I'm a man who left a rich woman. She was a dick. She was always mean, the smallest thing made her mad, and because she never really had to worry about things and repercussions, that let herself think it's okay to just go apeshit crazy and then provide gifts and sex to apologize. Sex was cool, but damn, she was mean. Hi, are you me? I dated a woman who was right about to get the peak pay with an extremely well-paid medical specialty. Every time I'd make any mistakes, she'd call me stupid. As in, I went into a bad lane where I was stuck behind some turning cars and she'd say it. She'd lock herself out of the house or leave the lights on in her car, and I'd need to jumpstart her, and I just said, honey, and didn't get mad, but she'd forget this stuff and just put me down immediately if I made the slightest error. There just was a moment I realized that me being kind wasn't getting her to treat me any better. Also, she'd complain how the men in her specialist field often had wives they treated like shit or somehow junior members of the relationship. I realized that as soon as her income was higher, she'd consider my actually very, very good income some sort of character flaw. I wanted kids, she did too, and I realized she would treat me and the kids like this forever. Edit. She was an anesthetist. I dated a doctor who came from a very wealthy family. He grew up next door to a well-known country singer, for example. When I first met him, I finally understood what it meant to be swept off my feet. Fancy dinners, elaborate gifts, shows after shows, incredible trips. And yet, I was absolutely miserable through all of it. He was constantly reminding me that I was a problem, that my responses to his coldness were a problem. He isolated me from everyone, and when we got into an argument about how he shouldn't tell me when I can or can't go to the bathroom, I finally had enough. I was in therapy at that point, ironically at his request, and my therapist helped me see just what a narcissistic and controlling asshole he was. It took me 2 times to leave him for good because the love bombing was insane. I realized that no amount of money or prestige was worth how broken I felt inside. He needed me to be small so he could be big. Went on dates with a daddy's money-rich guy. Went originally kept the dates basic cheap places and I'd pay for myself. He hated the dates and wanted to treat me. I was hesitant of that but allowed him to one date. His attitude 180 asmahid osishi e. And he believed since he dropped money on a nice steakhouse and expensive wine that I owed him. He wanted sex. He wanted me to be more submissive. He lost his damn mind. I blocked him immediately. I really don't get why these men want someone on their knees for them. Do they really not value human connectedness with a woman? Are they incapable of it? Dated a hedge fund dude for over a year. We lived together and were ring shopping. He said once we get married I wouldn't work anymore, and he forbid me from getting a graduate degree. I dumped him. He accused me of being a gold digger. Weird and wrong. Months later, he proposed to an ex-GF who was actually a gold digger who was waiting in the wings for him. He basically wanted total control over finances so he could cheat and have final say over all the family decisions. No regrets leaving him, even though he's worth millions and I've had to work harder for longer in my life. Whatevs, bruh, can't buy my dignity. Money's great, but it can't replace feeling appreciated or truly connected to someone. Some women leave because they want more than just a cushy life. They want a partner who's emotionally supportive and makes them feel valued. At the end of the day, no amount of wealth can fix a relationship that doesn't make you happy. Yeah, I could have stayed in a long-term relationship at 30 and been set financially for life, which was huge BC. My fam has no money at all, but I left BC. I knew I'd never truly be happy. If we had kids, I would have been the only parent. I'd never be a top priority, my needs would never matter as much, and he demanded a prenup, even though we both made pennies, but his dad left a lot of money to his mom. And that was supposed to be only for him. It was the best decision ever for about a decade. I bought a house, had a fulfilling career and social life, traveled often, and things were looking up until a couple of years ago. I've been laid off twice, now in my 9th month of the second layoff, and lost my social life and some family members. Friends moved or showed their true asshole colors, brother divorced, dad hates me, BC, I vote for Democrats, etc. He OTOH moved to another country, makes $250K or more, and knocked up the first girl he slept with who is 15 years his junior. Even though I know I made the right decision, I can't help but think of how much I wouldn't have to worry about my bank account, retirement, and spending in general if I just ignored my feelings and values. But I still tell myself it was the right move, and I'll get out of this cycle at some point. Hopefully soon. Thanks for watching this video. Subscribe and comment if you dated some rich asshole guys. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.